2018 is coming to a close.
It's been a busy year.
A year like no other.
Midterm elections.
The Mueller investigation.
Tax cuts, the border.
The lesson of 2018 is that all the prior lessons of politics have been thrown out the window.
2019 is the year when the cops arrive.
I'm Chabria, former senior advisor to Ohio Governor John Kasich and current Republican strategist.
Hi, I'm Patti Doyle. I'm a Democratic political strategist. I've worked for Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden. I've been in politics for 30 years.
I'm David Frum, a writer with The Atlantic and formerly of the Bush White House.
All right, so for better or for worse, 2018 is almost over. I'm guessing you're going to say for better. And I think we're trying to figure out what this year was and what next year will be. So let's start with this one. What was the biggest surprise politically for you in 2018?
Look, I think the biggest surprise for me was the turnout. We had a midterm election where millions and millions of people came out, and it was a presidential level. I did not see that coming going into 2018. I thought people would be interested, but I thought it'd be politics as usual. That was a huge surprise to me.
I agree with that, Jay, but I also, the component of women in the turnout was really what surprised me. Not just women running for office, not just women working on political campaigns, but voters. Women voters were the key to this 2018 midterms. And also, they were so engaged. I mean, we saw reports where women in huge numbers were the ones calling their members of Congress, going out and protesting and marching. And I just think it was the year of the woman, but also in terms of, for instance, the Kavanaugh hearings, and we had the incredible testimony of Christine Blasey Ford and the Me Too movement. It was just all coalesced into November of 2018.
But in a way, didn't the Women's March foretell that?
Well, it did, but I don't think we imagined in January of 2017 what it would actually mean in November of 2018 in terms of more women being elected ever in Congress before. And it was the Women's March, but it was also the buyer's remorse of Hillary losing. You know, we had the opportunity to elect the first woman president, and we came close, but we didn't do it. And so I think we're making up for it now.
For me, the biggest surprise was Donald Trump giving away the store to North Korea, getting nothing in return, and the entire Republican Party pretending that some tremendous victory had occurred. If President Obama had given away military exercises, threatened to, with South Korea, threatened to tear up the treaty, the trade treaties with South Korea, poisoned relations in all kinds of ways with both the South Koreans and Japan, all for a photo op, preliminary to which he said he had fallen in love with the North Korean dictator. I don't think he'd be impeached. I think he'd have been sent to the taxidermist. And yet, if you live inside the Republican world, this is hailed as a great diplomatic achievement for which the United States got nothing. Nothing.
So one of the things that we lament journalistically every year is that there's so many stories that are underreported that you just, you know, in a rocketed pace news cycle like the one we're in, the things you don't get to. For me, most underreported story in the U.S. politics is sort of the absence of filled positions at the State Department there. There's no ambassador in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Cuba. There's no deputy assistant secretaries of state in a number of places, and I think it has real world consequences, but I'm sure you have a whole bunch of them too, underreported stories.
Well, this is not exactly an underreported story, but it's an underabsorbed story, and that is the huge New York Times report on President Trump's family's... I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I did some mind reading. Tax history. The leading newspaper in the United States, on its front page, accused the President of the United States of criminal tax fraud. And then a follow-up story 2 weeks later in which they did it again using the word fraud 3 times, which is an invitation. If you think we're wrong, sue us for defamation. Now, it's not underreported. The reporting was amazing. But the rest of the world seems to have decided it's too technical or it was too long ago. The Times' data ran out in about 2004, so they don't have information after 2004. Perhaps the president turned over a new leaf and ceased to engage in criminal tax fraud after 50 years of doing it in 2004, but maybe not.
So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think of a new one here.
Okay.
So Jay, what's yours?
Well, and I also think this is underabsorbed too, and there's a good reason why this is not reported on. It's the way in which the media treats themselves in the United States. They audition for themselves on Twitter. They talk about stories and they're snarky, and they wonder why people have lost faith in that big institution. And I think that's a shame because the media has a critical role to play in American politics. But right now, people just don't believe in it. And it's largely due to the way reporters and the cable news stations treat themselves.
So how do they make that better?
Well, I think they need to look at themselves in the mirror and do some self-reflection in terms of how they're delivering the news, and actually talk about it too. No reporter should go on Twitter. I think they should just use it for informational purposes and not for opinions, and that's one of the biggest issues they've got.
Well, separating opinion from fact, for sure, but is it a matter of respect in terms of how you communicate with the audience?
Well, communicating with the audience is fine. The way I look at, when I look at reporters on Twitter, everyone is auditioning for the next job or they're trying to impress their colleagues. And that's not the way it should be. It should, in my opinion, the way the news media should be, not the opinion folks. They need to be reporting the stories, and they don't do that anymore. Now it's the opinion and fact get bled into each other.
Okay, fair. Patti?
Well, I think, I don't know if this is an underreported story, but what I find fascinating about what's been going on over the last 2 years, and it speaks to Jay's point, is the normalization of the chaos. It's how we now, not only the media, but as a country, take President Trump's tweets, for instance, the misspellings, the poor grammar, the sometimes just blatant falsehoods of them, and like we take it as news and we react to them. The media reacts to them, voters react to them, Twitter reacts to it, and it's just not normal. And it's not. I don't know what the answer is, whether it's we need to ignore it unless there is actual news in it and not cover it. But the flip side to that is he is the president of the United States, and everything that he says that comes out of his Twitter account is technically news.
Well, in terms of what he says and what he does, sometimes what he accomplishes gets lost, it seems. So tangibly, again, for better or for worse, what is something that he has actually, where has he actually affected change?
Well, he's here, one for positive and one for negative. For positive, I think the president has been successful in squeezing Iran harder with sanctions in 2018. That's part of the price. That's one of the motives behind overlooking this terrible murder committed by the Saudis of a journalist, Jamal Khashoggi. But no question, Iran is in a vice, and that is going to lead perhaps to some kind of crisis, maybe ideally some kind of concessions leading to a diplomatic outcome. Another place where he's made a difference, this time very much for ill, is the utter absence of the United States from the negotiations over Brexit. The EU, including Britain, is the largest trading bloc on earth. The United States has a huge interest in a successful outcome to these talks, and the United States government seems to have no point of view. There's no presidential representative. It's not engaged at all. And the president is constantly egging the British on to the hardest possible exit, which is the worst outcome for them, but also, more importantly, from an American point of view, the worst outcome for the United States.
Okay, Patti?
Well, look, I think unemployment is at an all-time low, and that's a very positive thing. And, you know, a lot of economists saying that we're going into a recession in the next year, but for now, the economy is good, and a lot of people are feeling better about it. And some people will argue whether that was Barack Obama's policies during his 8 years, and Trump was just riding a trend. Others will argue, you know, Trump's president, and it's his economy. So I think that's good. And I'm one of the few Democrats who will say, will give Trump credit for that.
You have credit to give to him for a few more things?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Look, people going into 2016, they didn't understand how religious conservatives would say, I support Donald Trump with infidelities and all these other things out there. They did it for one reason, because of the judicial system. He nominates federal judges, and so far he has nominated very conservative judges, and that is going to have a lasting impact for generations. And now with the Senate going more in Republican hands, that's only going to get easier for the next 2 years. It's going to just completely change the face of the judicial system in America for generations to come.
Okay, so let's look ahead to 2019, a little bit of a prediction time coming up here. A lot of the viewers ask questions about your instincts on how the president will fare in the year ahead. It seems to be obsessional on the part of some people. So what's your gut?
Well, Patti correctly identified the strength of the economy as both a good thing in itself and also a tremendous resource for the president. I think he's running out of that resource. I don't see crisis ahead in 2019, but the financial markets are telling us that the economy is going to soften. The bond market is suggesting they think interest rates are going to be lower in 2020 than they are now. That's a prediction of recession. Why would interest rates be lower? If someone's cut them, why would they cut them? Because the economy is in a slump. So I think there's been a lot of talk about the Trump base. Trump supporters are not all the Trump base, but the Trump base is not made out of granite and marble. It is made out of human beings who react to experiences. Their experiences with this presidency to date have been reasonably good in the ways that matter most. That is about to be less true.
That is survival through the prism of economics, but what about through the prism of the Mueller investigation?
I think that's a very good question. There are so many different investigations going on at the same concurrently. You've got Mueller, you've got the Southern District of New York, you have the new AG in New York is vowed to look into his taxes, going on that New York Times article. The Trump inauguration is being investigated. The Trump transition is being investigated. The Trump campaign is being investigated. And now we have another new level of investigations coming, and that's coming from House Democrats, whether that's going to be looking into how he dealt with Puerto Rico after the hurricane. And, you know, we don't know what's ultimately going to be found, but I do think that given all of these vulnerabilities, Republicans are going to have to, at some point in the next year, ask themselves, do we really want to stick with this horse, given all the vulnerabilities and potential, you know, criminal activity?
As a Republican, are you asking yourself that?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I always do. And I think I've got a lot of problems with the Trump administration. I always have. But what I'll say in regard to this question is this is a political process more than anything else. And Patti and I have talked about this before. It's not necessarily just a legal position that you have to articulate. You have to articulate the politics of it too. Do the Democrats have that spokesperson that can cut through the noise and say, this is the reason you've got to impeach him or you can't support him in 2020? I don't see that person on the horizon. It's not going to be Nancy Pelosi. Is there someone else out there that can do this? I don't know. Maybe it's one of the 20 people that are running for president.
Okay, so speaking of all these people, last question, prediction for 2019. Who do you think will be the most significant or interesting political actor in 2019? You cannot say President Trump, and it doesn't have to be a politician. Patti.
Okay, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Beto O'Rourke, I think, is the person to really watch, because already people are saying, oh, he's the next Barack Obama. And for me, as a political junkie, it's just going to be very interesting to see whether or not he can rise to that mantle of Barack Obama. And we're going to see in the first quarter of 2019 all of these people running for office. And that means they're going to have to go through some tests. Can they raise the money? And can they make an impact in the first early states like Iowa and New Hampshire? We already know Beto O'Rourke can raise the money, and we know he made a huge impact in Texas and nationally, but can he do it in a retail level in Iowa and New Hampshire? So I'm going to be looking at him, and if he can pass those tests, I think we have somebody that Democrats can sort of hold up.
Patti, is he going to run?
He hasn't said so, but he has no reason not to.
Okay, I was just looking for some insider insight there.
I'm going to be watching very closely someone who is not going to be a candidate for president. That is the new governor of California, Gavin Newsom. California is this dynamic powerhouse in the world. It has been utterly shut out of political power for the past 2 years, to the point where the state can have the worst wildfire in its history, and that be a subject of no interest at all to the national government. Suddenly, California is back. The Speaker of the House is a fellow Californian. California is on a high. Its economy is in great shape. Its finances are improving. And California, which has a different view of the United States from east of the Sierras, I think it's going to make its weight felt after being absent for a long time.
Okay, last word to you, Jay.
Representative Adam Schiff, I think, is going to be very interesting. He's going to be chairman of the Intelligence Committee going into this new Congress, and the way in which he handles himself, he will be a household name by year end, but the way in which he handles himself will tell you if the Democrats are going to be successful or not.
Okay, the three of you, again, thank you very much, and bring on 2019.
Thank you.